So the question is, if you're somebody that lives in the fear of disappointing people, how do you find the trigger that had you start doing it in the first place? I'm going to share with you a story about how I figured it out, and then I'm going to give you some advice about how you can think about it, and then I want to say a few other things about the fear of disappointing people, because this is, I believe, the single biggest factor for most people that robs them of success. That you use what other people might say or think or be disappointed by as an excuse to not fully be yourself, to not fully go after what you want. And so first let me talk about triggers, because I believe that for most of us, the habit, and I use the word habit because habit just means that it's a pattern. We have a pattern where we fear disappointing people, and then that triggers us to operate in certain ways. That pattern began a very long time ago. And I think it's safe to say that for 99% of us, you can find where it began somewhere in your childhood. And it probably doesn't matter that you find the first, because you probably have 150 examples of being terrified that your dad was going to scream at you, or terrified that your mom was going to get cold and get that tone of voice, or terrified that somebody was going to be upset with you. Because the fear of disappointing people really has more to do about being in trouble with somebody, right? So for me, I know the moment because it was a really defining moment for me, but I didn't remember it until I was 27. What happened is I had a memory being in a group environment during a seminar. Somebody was sharing about being a sexual abuse survivor, and she was talking about her sister, and all of a sudden I had this memory triggered where I remembered being in the 4th grade, and I remember being on a ski trip with my family and a couple other families, and I remembered waking up in the middle of the night with an older kid on top of me. Now, it wasn't a terrifying sexual abuse story. It was more confusing to remember it. He did what he did, and then he got off of me, and I remember my brother was sleeping in the bed next to me in the bunk bed, and I remember thinking in that moment, oh my God, don't make a noise. I don't want this person to hurt Derek. So fast forward to the morning, all the kids leave to ski. I'm kind of like underneath the covers, and I get out, I go downstairs, and as I go down the stairs, I hear my mom talking in the kitchen, and I think, I gotta tell her, I gotta tell her, I gotta tell her, I gotta tell her. So I'm in 4th grade. I round the corner, my mother's there with another mom, and there's the kid. And my mom goes, how'd you sleep? And I said, fine. And what's interesting is what? A 4th grader's brain. I mean, my mom's not gonna be upset with me. She might have gotten upset all right if I had said, not at me. There was this moment where I remember it now like that. And you don't have to come up with the moment, because I guarantee you've got 100 of them, where you have a bad report card, or you broke something, or mom or dad drank and you heard them pull in and you felt the anxiety coming in and you went into a mode where you became quiet because you don't want to upset somebody. It was just this mode where I so knew in that moment that I needed a strategy to avoid a scene. Does that make sense? Because that's what you're doing when you are not disappointing people. You are avoiding making a scene or having them do one. Does that resonate a little bit? Okay, good. So you can go to the root cause, because what I discovered in that moment in realizing, holy cow, at the age of 9, I made a decision not to tell the truth, that I would just make up what I thought would make the situation okay. And what's interesting is I can take that one decision and roll the clock forward until the age of literally like 27, probably took me longer to about like 35, 40 even, to stop lying. The fear of disappointment for me turned me into a liar, and I didn't even realize it, because I was so worried about creating a scene or upsetting people or having people judge me that I started lying as a strategy. I invented it as a 4th grader. It didn't work in my life. It made every relationship suck. It made me miserable, but that's what happened. So when you think about your pattern of being afraid of disappointing people, of managing not making a scene, you don't need to find the exact trigger when it began. If you find just one and you understand kind of how old were you and what did you feel and what were you trying to manage, and then for me, what I say to myself is, oh, well, I have a lot of empathy for myself now, because I understand why I developed that strategy. And now that I saw that it was a strategy that worked, because lying really worked when I was little, not so much when I was an adult. When I understand it was a strategy, I can now say, oh, well, that's a strategy that worked then. Now that I'm in this chapter of my life, I'm going to pick a different strategy. Does that help? Okay, great.